98% of people do not qualify to invest in that particular area. So the types of things we try to help our entrepreneurs and founders understand is you got to plant the seeds, and you can't expect immediate ROI on everything that you do. And marketing and branding takes time.
Hey, this episode is brought to you by the outstanding team at Compass Strategic Advisors, your trusted partner in driving strategic growth. Whether it's expanding into new territories, launching products, rebranding, or hiring key staff and board members, they offer the expert guidance every step of the way. With a versatile approach and a proven track record, Compass is the go-to resource for both startups and established companies looking to scale with confidence. Thanks, and show your support for this podcast by sharing some sponsor appreciation. Check these guys out at www.compass-strategic-advisors.com. Let's get ready to lift off.
Woo!
So glad I get to welcome Carine Schneider, the founding partner of Compass Strategic Advisors, to the show. How are you, Carine?
I am doing great.
Corinne, you just whispered to me that you're going to Hawaii, so I hate to tease that out, but of course you're doing great.
Yeah.
Not only is the anticipation fantastic, and you deserve the great break. Whoever has a bad time in Hawaii?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I know a few people have had a bad time when it ended poorly for them, but for the most part, I'm hoping that's not the situation. But first trip with my granddaughter, so
Yay.
I'll be doing some babysitting, and I was telling you, last time I was where we're going was 30 years ago. My son took his first steps, and I haven't been to this part of Hawaii in 30 years, so I'm looking forward to kind of be a little more adventuresome, going like I always go to the same place, and I know the same restaurants and the same stores, and this time I realized that I'm like, whoa, I don't really know where I'm going to be getting coffee and which beach I'm going to. So it'll be kind of exciting to be a little unexpected.
Oh, well, good. I think you tie off the summer very nicely. I'll look forward to hearing some more stories. In the meantime, let's start talking about some exciting things going on around you. One, you did an update on your book, the Democratization of Private Markets, and I read the first version, and then you updated it recently. Share with us what was the catalyst to get you to write the update for that book.
And I should mention you wrote the foreword, so thank you very
Yeah.
much, Keith Newman.
It's-
Yeah, I wrote it in 2001, coming right off of COVID. And I think at that time, it was a very unsure time about what was going to happen. We had a different president in the White House. We had a different SEC commissioner, and things were still very wild, wild west. And kind of fast forward 4 years, and we're out of COVID. We're out of working out of our bedrooms.
yes.
We have new people running the show. And I started to look at some of the things that were in the book, and I said, oh, that's not true anymore. That's not how it works anymore. And I thought, I want to make sure if this book is out there that it's accurate. And so I thought I'll just kind of update it. But as I went through it line by line, I was shocked at how much has changed
Oh,
and new things I had to talk about. Like, I'll give you an example. The UK has introduced something called PISCES, PICSES, and it's the UK government looking at the private market and saying, hey, we should be involved in this thing. We should provide structure. And by the way, if people do things the right way, we should make it tax advantage for the people who are involved. And we as the government can do that. So they've set up a whole infrastructure, and like I said, there's certain things, if you do it right, you can really save on tax in the UK. And there are, if you read their legislation, there are things that look very similar to the American style private market. But I think we have a lot to learn from what they're doing. And again, it's, I think, the first time our government has really stepped in. And so things like that made me realize that globally things are changing, nationally in the US things are changing, and legislation is changing. I mean, we just saw Trump sign the executive order in the last few days about allowing 401ks now to invest in private market, investment opportunities. So all these things kind of led me to, okay, time to update the book.
it's really shocking too, because It's almost like the frog in the hot water experiment. You don't really notice it until it's too late. But now you bring up a point, and I know you've been a champion of this for a while. And it's important to mention you've been around this space for a very long time. Your days at PwC and Global Shares, and then you ran the cap table company Estrella that was part of AST, and then Equinity. I mean, that's a very formidable background, and I just covered a portion of what you've done, but you've been an evangelist, promoter of the idea of opening up access to the private markets. And I think the opportunity of leveraging the private market and letting people invest more with 401ks and things like that is a real game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I when I came out with the book the first time, I went and spoke at a women in private equity conference in London. And I'm thinking, I'm amongst my people. This is great. Impressive women and investing in all these companies. And I'm talking about, the democratization, and we should make sure that other people can participate. And this woman in the back row starts literally heckling me as I'm talking about this and telling me how wrong I am and how dangerous the private market is and how only people who really know what they're doing should be in it. And I said, well, how many of you in this room know what an ETF is? And, like a third of the people raise their hand. And I'm
Sure.
like, but do you know that every single person in this room is allowed to invest in an ETF, whether you know what it is or not? You don't have to take a test. Cryptocurrency, how many of you really know what that is? So if you look at the things that are available to people, we can invest in a lot of things, but mom and pops, Main Street, sometimes they call them widows and orphans, which I hate to say, but the rank and file person who does not live in Silicon Valley like you and I do generally can't participate in the private market, which is where, if you look at it, tremendous growth, tremendous opportunity for innovation, lots of companies that are changing our world for the good. And yet, 98% of people do not qualify to invest in that particular area. So seeing this go through the 401k, I mean, I'm a little bit, it's going to take a couple of years for everybody to catch up. We're going to need
Yeah.
funds that are going to be able to do this. But what it does say is, hey, we're going to see a lot more inventory. And inventory means we're going to see a lot more demand for companies that are good, that need capital, that need investment, and that will stay private because they don't have to go public. So a lot more opportunity for Main Street to participate.
Okay, so just to put it out there, if I wanted to take my 401k dollars and invest in OpenAI or another startup, down the street from me, the guy is starting a new AI uh, business to manage service bays at car dealerships. I have a certain amount of money that I can invest. I've uh, dedicated it to high risk. What would stop me from doing that?
So a couple things. If you just wanted to go buy OpenAI stock, that's not what the executive order is saying. You still have to be an accredited investor in order to do that, and you have to use a self-directed IRA. So that, and there's only a certain number of administrators out there who will let you do that, who will allow you to own that. So you can't take your 401k money at Fidelity and say, hey, Fidelity, go buy some OpenAI. What you will be able to do is Fidelity or whoever's your 401k provider is going to start to have funds that are made up of OpenAI, SpaceX, all these kind of darlings of the private market. And you'll be able to say, I want to put 10% of my 401k money in the private market fund. And I want to participate in what's happening there. And at this point, it doesn't look like you'll be limited. You could put 98% of your 401k money in the private market if that's what you wanted to do, as
Yeah.
long as there are funds that can take your money. And that's one of the questions is, will these funds be able to find enough opportunities, and will they be able to find managers who can evaluate these opportunities so that you'll feel comfortable putting your money in those funds over,
Right.
a traditional fund?
Right, because in context, the person at Fidelity or Schwab or somewhere else, they don't necessarily do a lot of private company investing, early stage tech investing.
Right. And what worries them, and remember, there are fiduciary responsibilities of these fund managers and the
Right.
companies, is that the amount of disclosure in the private market is nowhere close to what you get in the
Right.
public market. So you're now a fund manager and you go, hey, let's put money in SpaceX. And you're like, were you ever wrong picking IBM? Are you ever wrong picking SpaceX? But what if you pick Perplexity, or what if you pick another company and that company goes down and they say, Keith, you were the manager of this fund. What did you do? Why did you put some money in some
Right.
random, AI
Can I
company?
buy some stock in Theranos still?
I think that's over. Yeah.
No, but the point you're making
Yeah.
though is,
Yeah.
is there the oversight and the the compliance requirements, et cetera?
And the disclosure and the information. And there are AI companies out there. There's a company called Charlie Capital that does a great job of going out and looking at analyzing the available data from an AI perspective into these investments. But still, these companies are not held to the same level as a public company in terms of disclosure.
Nice. Okay, well that creates too nice of a segue for the next book you're writing. I didn't know you were going to be an author all of a sudden,
Me
but
neither. Yeah.
you're becoming a famous author. Talk to me about this new book about the stock industry, stock
Yeah.
finance industry, and changing wealth accumulation.
Yeah, well, when I graduated from kindergarten, I went straight into working at Oracle, and this is my 40th year of working in the stock plan business. And so I started in 1985, and I had so many conversations with people where they don't understand the history or they don't understand how things happened. And so the more I started talking to younger people, I went, oh, let me explain, let me correct you. I thought, really need to write this book. And then I was talking to a colleague of mine at Morgan Stanley, someone I've known for a long time, Mark Curtis. And Mark's like, you know what, there's a bigger story here. This is not about 40 years in stock plans. This is about how stock plans change Silicon Valley and, frankly, the world. Because if you think about it, without stock plans, there's no Bezos, there's no Zuckerberg. They just be very well-paid executives, right? Living in very big houses. But
Right.
this life-changing wealth that a stock plan can bring not only the founder and the executives, but all the employees, it really is amazing what that has done to innovation and the world. And again, not just Silicon Valley, not just the United States, but beyond. And so I'm going back and I'm looking at the 40 years, the places that I work, the people that I interacted, and really talking about starting at Oracle before the IPO, what it was like before voicemail and email and the internet and all these other things, and how it progressed, but at the same time telling that story about changing the world. And so I'm very excited. So Mark has agreed to write the foreword, and so I hope the book will be out next April in time for our big industry conference that we have. And it's been a journey for sure. I mean, I just talked to someone last week. I haven't talked to him since 1987. So I'm
That's all.
going back in time.
But I like the fact that you sort of like to peel back the onion and go, okay, look, everyone knows about venture capital, and then we talk a ton about that. And everyone knows about a cap table. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people know about cap tables and equity shares, but the detail behind it, how that gets managed and doled out, and how that can be leveraged, um, is amazing, and it's also game changing for the individual. More people have to be aware of it, so I'm glad you're bringing that up, and it makes me feel like a lot of new companies are going to be born out of this next generation ecosystem
Yeah.
for private markets, and all the services that'll be coming out of that.
Yeah. And what's interesting is there'll be innovation and there'll be small companies that come out of it. And we've seen that already. What I'm seeing are the big companies coming in. So you kind of, from the bottom, the small companies are coming in.
Hmm.
From the top. We're seeing the Apollos and the Blackstones and the BlackRocks and
Yeah,
DTCC and these firms saying, we need to be part of this.
yeah,
There's some plumbing that's needed here,
yeah,
and there might be some regulation needed. There might be some structure needed. That
right.
up until now, we've all kind of been handling this on spreadsheets and email, and maybe we need to get to the next level.
Well, and I was going to say, AI is going to have a pretty big part in all of this also. You're talking about doing the research or doing the administrative. I mean, that lays right into its strength.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was talking to the CEO of Charlie Capital the other day, and he said, people used to Google, they put in what company should I invest in, and then you kind of get it. Well, now you can go to the AI and say, I want to invest in a space company. What are the best companies to invest in? And the
Mhm.
AI will have done the analysis. And I actually watched this. There were two AI companies that were, if, from the outside, you'd say they look the same revenue, same number of employees, they kind of, and the AI goes through the analysis and comes back and it says, invest in this company, do not invest in that company. And it
Oh,
explained why. And the subtleties between the two companies, I probably would not have ever picked up on. But as an investor, you're like, now I get it. Now I'm much better educated. Not good for the company that, came back negative because you could die as a company much quicker than you used to be able to.
hopefully they get the down low on that and can take some
Yeah,
reaction to that.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
we're celebrating 2 years at Compass recently, and you're the new company that you're managing. And we talked about new services required in the AI world and in this new world order in private markets. Tell me, how are things going at Compass? Where are you finding this niche? Because you don't come across as the traditional, consulting or financial services type of company. Where do you fit into the whole ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, I think when I left my last position, I thought, I've run a lot of companies, I've raised capital, I built products, I was a partner at PwC, I did all the consulting, and I've got all this experience, and I'm not ready yet to go sit on the beach in Hawaii full time. And so my business partner and I, Paul Aarons, we hung out our shingle and said, look, we're here to help these companies that couldn't afford to probably hire someone like me. And I don't really want to work for your company full time, but you could get a piece of me. You had this whole fractional idea. So
Right.
in a way, we're like a fractional strategy officer for a company. So we spend time working with very small companies and very large companies. Our largest client is a multi-billion-dollar company.
Wow.
And so we do a variety of things like, hey, I want to go into a new geography, but I don't know anybody there, and I don't know the culture, and I don't know who to talk to. Can you help me?
Mm,
Or I need to build a new product. I see something new that I want to do, but I don't really know how to go about building the product and how do I launch it and how do I build my brand. To companies who are brand new, we have one of our newest clients started about a month ago, 2 months ago. And so they're like, okay, I'm building this thing. I'm going to launch it later this year. What conferences should I be at? Who should I be meeting with and talking to? And can you help me get an advisory board together of the right names? And so it's a variety of that, but a lot of what we touch is just helping people with our experience and saying, look, that you're going to blow it if you do that. And, here's the person you need to talk to who will get you like a good example is we had a client who needed to talk to someone at the SEC about something. Well, we
mm.
knew exactly not only which commissioner, but we knew how to get to that commissioner. So we got him a meeting with the commissioner. And so that's the type of thing that he, as a new entrepreneur, probably wouldn't have been able to do. But we
Yeah.
we are able to help in that way with our Rolodex.
Kind
There's
of interesting, Corinne. I was thinking of you as more the back office kind of support services. And I know you have a lot of that experience in your background, but I also see a lot of like chief of staff kind of value that you provide. That's one of those hot new titles where the chief of staff is really like almost at the White House level, where it's the right hand of the president trying to help them with their decision making and trying to take care of a lot of the things that are too you know, operational, I guess, and less.
yeah. Yeah, and it can be that we just finished a project or we're delivering a report this week for a founder and CEO in the lending space who wasn't sure he was paying his employees right. And so we really delved into not only the base salary and the bonus, but what's the commission program? And the commission, he was losing so much money because he was paying it all out in commission. So we were really able to take a look at that, come back, and this is with our equity and our compensation hats on, but also as someone running a business, I've run businesses. You can't pay your salespeople all the profit because
Yeah,
there's nothing left for the company. So it's that type of thing where you, as someone coming in from the outside, we can sit down and say, "This is what we're seeing." And the CEO said, "Yeah, I know. I kind of figured that out when I lost all this money last year, and I don't want to do that anymore. What do I do?" You know,
yeah.
and come in as a sounding board.
That's game changing stuff. What other successes have you had in your 2 years that give you?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite stories is we have a company who's a client who's outside the United States, and they wanted to come into the United States and start, everyone I talk to outside the US says the US is the market, everyone wants to be here. So we're talking to them and we said, let's have a dinner and invite a bunch of people to this dinner who are kind of movers and shakers in the Silicon Valley. And I remember thinking, this is early on, I don't really know why I'm inviting all these people, but they should be in the room and they should meet these guys. So somebody came to that dinner, sat next to one of the folks from our client, and had a nice chat. And about a year later, calls me up and says, Look, I remember that dinner and I met those people and I'm doing an RFP and I think I'm going to put that company on the list. No one here knows who they are, but I was impressed.
Yeah.
So they get on the list of about 15 companies, and you think, well, it's nice to be on the list of 15 companies.
Right.
They make it to the finals. They make it to the final three. And we're thinking, I mean, they're pleased as punch. They're like, and this is with a major, major company here in the United States. And they're thinking, well, we just get to be invited to the party. They ended up winning the RFP.
Wow.
And to me, that was just proof of that dinner. And I remember them saying, well, what's the budget for the dinner? And I'm thinking, don't worry about that. Like it will pay off. I just can't guarantee when it will pay off. And now, that $10,000 dinner that night, and I think you were at that dinner, if I remember correctly. I was sicker than a dog. I remember that. That dinner has paid off in a multi-million dollar deal. So those are the types of things we try to help our entrepreneurs and founders understand is you got to plant the seeds and you can't expect immediate ROI on everything that you do. And you and I have talked about this for a long time. Marketing and branding takes time.
I think relationships too, Karina. I think we talk about AI and the automating everything process and removing humans and all these different positions and stuff. And that makes sense to me. But what you just described, I couldn't have sent my agent, my AI agent to that dinner.
Exactly.
I couldn't have met those people at that dinner. I wouldn't have been able to recall that and get part of that RFP. So there's something there to manage. And I think it does help as companies come to the US. I had a conversation myself with somebody this week. They're coming to the US and they started, what should we do? And I
Mhm.
just thought, what an opportunity for them to meet with somebody at Stanford, somebody from Sand Hills, somebody from a major AI company, somebody from a major SaaS tech company that's been on that growth roller coaster. Maybe public, maybe not public, but has faced a lot of these challenges and just sit with that person for 20 minutes or a cup of coffee,
Yeah,
and leave after those 5 conversations. I think you have an entirely new perspective.
right. There's something to be said between about the subtle customs, not just the overt customs, but the subtle customs that people have. We have a client, we were working on an M&A deal with them, and it was they were not this had nothing to do with America. So they were outside the US, the buyer was outside the US, the seller was outside the US. We were watching this just be a train wreck because the way people expected responses were very different between these two cultures.
Yeah.
We're in the middle saying, okay, they expect a very quick response. And the other guys are like, yeah, but we're going to take a couple weeks. We got to think about it. We're like,
Yeah.
well, these people don't expect you to think. These people expect you to move. So a lot of it was just the coaching of if you want to be successful, and you and I know this, Silicon Valley has a very specific vibe to it. And if you walk into Silicon Valley and you don't understand the vibe, you'll blow yourself up so quick and you'll never get another chance because memories are long here.
Yeah. Well, I heard that that guy you mentioned earlier, Paul Aarons, is somebody to have a cup of coffee with, although I don't know what you can predict as the outcome of those such meetings.
I think you have to have a beer with him because if you do coffee, he could have three double espressos while you're sitting there for the first 10 minutes. And yeah, Paul's a special person and I'm really lucky. We work very well together. We're very yin and yang. I always tell people he does all the work and I do all the talking. Uh, but uh,
I
and
think you're both great at both. I listen. I want to just get one last question into you, and it has to do with the whole IPO market because you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this whole thing as well. My hypothesis is that we're going to continue to see a slow and steady increase of IPOs, but we're going to see an accelerated pace of M&A activity and shutdowns. There was just a ton of AI companies being started, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur and pitch to Mark Cuban on Shark Tank and all this other stuff. And listen, a lot of that stuff is good. I'm not being negative about that. It's just the course of, it's kind of Darwinian. It's kind of just
Mhm.
how it goes. But I'm wondering your thoughts on the M&A side and IPO side, if you agree with my hypothesis and how much we'll see in terms of growth. I think there's been an increase in IPOs this year to date, but are we going to see, 20% increase, 50%, 100% increase in IPOs, say the second half of this year, first half of next year versus the prior 12 months?
Yeah. So here's my thoughts. And, we both worked at NASDAQ, so we both kind of keep in track, watch with what's going on. So the IPO market has been healthy this year. I think M&As, I think everything is accelerating in time. So where it used to take a year to do an M&A, now companies are, in 3 weeks, if I don't get bought, I'm out of business type of thing. Here's a couple statistics that might be interesting for you. In the private market, 10% of the trading is in OpenAI right now. 10% of all the private market trading.
Sure.
Um, of the AI companies, there are 19 companies in the private market that are really being traded on a regular basis. So we could talk about what those 19 companies do, but you kind of go, well, it
It's
seems like
Anthropic, Perplexity, yeah.
exactly, but it seems like a lot of companies. So Um, I do think that IPOs still have a place in the whole ecosystem. I do think there are companies who really believe it's the right way to exit versus doing an M&A, and they're structured for that. I still think we're going to have the SpaceXs and the OpenAIs for quite a long time. I saw a question the other day on a webinar where someone said, "Well, if I want to participate in the private market, why wouldn't I just go buy Microsoft? Because Microsoft owns so much of OpenAI. So in essence, aren't I really participating in OpenAI in a public company way?" And I think we're going to see more of that. These really large public companies are going to be investing more in the private market, and that's going to be our way for those people who want to invest in public companies only to be there. But I think we've got an open window now between September of 2025 until about May or June of next year before we get to the midterms that I think is going to be robust, busy, healthy. People are raring to go. And then I think that we'll have a little slowdown as we get closer to the midterms and people are going to say, where are we heading? I also think just watching the SEC and what the new commissioner is, what's on his agenda, what's
Yeah,
important to him. It's going to say
right.
a lot about where we're going to go with capital markets.
And Corinne, are we going to be able to scout? I guess we could today, like what's happening with NASDAQ private markets or Forge or, our friends over at Gondola and things like that. Can we start to watch, the buying and selling activity in those shares? We can see more of what's happening, what's getting hot in the private markets.
Yeah. Yeah, and they all have indexes and they all have, ways of trying to show you how good it is. Nasdaq Private Market puts out every 6 months at mid-year and end year a report about what's happened. And Forge is now doing a similar type of report. And if this is your area, I encourage you to read those, get on the mailing lists and get them delivered because it's really good to get an idea of what the activity is and where the focus is. But Forge is a publicly traded company, so it's a great way to kind of watch the private markets via the lens of a publicly traded company that has to report, that has a CEO who has to come out and do an earnings call every 3 months. So for me, that's always really good to listen to Kelly Rodriguez and say, what's he seeing? What's he hearing?
Yeah.
And what's the health? But I would say the private markets are very healthy right now. And short of, where I always say we're one scandal away from new regulations. And that's kind of what I'm sitting, Ling2 recently went bankrupt and they were sitting on a lot of Ripple stock. And I'm really curious kind of what the fallout will be of that. But so far, not much fallout. So maybe people just want to ignore this stuff.
Hey, it's more stuff for your next book.
That's right. That's right.
Well, and then you get to go to Hawaii, finish a couple chapters. But in the meantime, thanks for spending some time with me here.
Yeah.
Congrats on your last book, your next book, your grandchild, managing that guy Paul over at Compass Strategic. And it sounds like you're off to another great year of business. So onward and upward.
Keith, thank you for the support you've always given us. We appreciate it and love listening to your show. I listen to it in the car a lot, so you got some great guests, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.